Hello students, today's agenda is to check homework. You will be able to work on sine and cosine and you will be able to complete 6.3. Today students will be able to use the sine and cosine ratios to solve word problems. So before we start with this exercise, let's begin by writing the sine and cosine ratios. Okay, so for the sine, and you have already learned about the tangent, but for the sine of theta, and this, remember, this is just a symbol, a Greek symbol to represent any angle, the measurement of any angle in degrees. It's always gonna be opposite over hypotenuse. Okay, and we will also be learning about the cosine. So the cosine of theta is equals to adjacent over hypotenuse. And so that's what we're going to be using today. Okay, so you might want to write it on a small flashcard and have it on the side. Okay, and so in here we have a problem. It says there is a pole. This pole has a tense string tied from the top of the pole to where you're standing. Okay, so try to picture that. The string is 400 feet long and forms a 30-degree angle with the ground. And then you have questions. So let's draw that first. There is a pole. You can think of the flagpole in your school. And then there is a string tied up to it. And let's see. It goes all the way to where you're standing. So maybe around here, you're standing in there. And the string is tied up from the pole to the ground where you're standing. And it's 400 feet, okay? The string is 400 feet. Oops. Not degrees, 400 feet. Sorry about that. Then it says that it forms a 90-degree, this string forms a 90-degree angle with the ground. So the ground is here. Okay. And this forms a 30-degree angle. Then it says, how tall is the pole? So how tall is that? We're going to call that X because we don't know. It also says, how far are you from the pole? Meaning from here to the pole, how far are you? So we'll call that either Y or W or any other variable, but we cannot call it X because the pole is already X. So let me write Y in here. Okay, so for the pole, meaning this, you have that, they're asking you that, and then you have the hypotenuse. Before I tell you, think of which one of the two are you using. Are you using the opposite side and hypotenuse, or the adjacent side and the hypotenuse? And while you think that, let me get my calculator because we're going to need that. Okay, so, well, remember that to identify, the easiest one to identify is the hypotenuse because it's always opposite of the 90-degree, means that this side will never touch that angle. Okay, that's the hypotenuse. So for sure, you're going to use either sine or cosine, not tangent. And and it's asking for this side. Remember that the other one that is easy to identify is the opposite side, because you're just looking from the angle that we're talking about straight in front. Okay, that's straight across, that's the opposite side. So you have the opposite and you have the hypotenuse. What would that be? Oh, it's sine of theta. Okay, so I'm gonna do my calculations here. And so it says that sine of theta is the opposite over hypotenuse, so it's gonna be sine of, instead of theta we put 30, right? Because this represents the angle that we are talking about, equals the opposite side. What's the measurement of the opposite side? Well, it's x divided by the hypotenuse. Which one is the hypotenuse? Oh, it's the side that does not touch the right angle. So 400, it's gonna go down here. Now we wanna know what the value of x is, and to do that, we need to cancel that. So we need to isolate the x. So if we're dividing, the opposite is to multiply by 400. And if we do it on one side, we have to do it on the other side. And this cancels. And so now I have x equals, this cannot be done by hand. You either have to use a chart. Let me move this out of the way, sorry. You need to use a chart or use a calculator. Now the thing is that sometimes, and I don't have one of the other types of calculators, but I'm gonna write in here, or maybe up here. Give me some space. Sorry if it moves a little bit. I'm gonna kind of zoom out so that we have more working space in here. But for the calculator, mine is this way. You press, I just tell them, it's like going backwards. You have 30, and then you have sine, and then this symbol, the parentheses is times, times, and then you have 400 equal. So by doing that, inserting in the calculator, you get 200 feet. And that's how you're supposed to do it. Some calculators don't have that order, so you're gonna put the angle measurement. Okay, if it's 60, then you press 60. If the angle is 45, then you put 45 in there. If the angle is, well, 90 degrees doesn't make sense, but any measurement of the angle, that's what you put first. The second thing that you press is sine. The next thing is times. This is times, okay? It's not x, it's times. And finally, what you're canceling here. I'm just gonna put 400, but you know that it means what you're canceling. Okay, so 400 and finally equal. So that's for my calculator. Some calculators don't work that way, and so I'm gonna write here for other calculators. Calculators. Some calculators you will start with 400. Okay, so I'm just gonna put the numbers for this specific one. 400, then you press times, okay, times the parentheses. Then you're gonna press sine. So basically just the way it is, just don't forget the times, okay? Some people forget that this, you also need to put it in the calculator as times. And then after the sine, you put the angle measurement. So in this case, it's 30, okay? Angle measurement. And for these ones, you have to close parentheses, because when you press sine, it opens a parenthesis and you put the 30, and then you have to close that parenthesis and then equal. Okay, so that's the order in which you have to put it in the calculator. Try both ways, and if you get 200, then that means that you will be using the right one. One other thing that you need to look in the calculators, let me see if you can see it there. Sometimes you're not going to get the answer, but it's because it says rad in here, or sometimes it says grad, okay? But it needs to be in degree, so make sure that you look for that button that says DRG, degree, and then it should say degree in there so that you're using it in the right mode. Okay, if it says grad or rad, you're not gonna get the right answer. So that's the first thing that you need to do. Then try to see which one is, and then go with that one. If it's backwards, then use this one. If it's correct in the right order, then use this one. And always stick with that one, either for tangent, sine, or cosine, okay? But it's gonna be the same order. Okay, instead of backwards, you are gonna go this way. Don't forget the times though. Okay, sorry, that was a long explanation, but I think it's gonna go easier from here. So now, again, in my calculator, it's gonna go backwards. For you, it might be like this. Now it says, so the pole is 200. Now it says, how far are you from the pole? So from here to the pole, how far is that? Again, now I'm not using the opposite. I'm gonna be using the adjacent. And how do I know what the adjacent side is? The adjacent side will always be between the angle that we're using and the right angle. So is that one. So that line, that side that is connecting the two angles, right angle and the angle that you're working with. Okay, so I don't know if to have this in here because it's not, doesn't give me enough space to work. Okay, since I already have this, I'm gonna just put it here, since you already have the word problem. So since I have the adjacent, or we're talking about the adjacent side and the hypotenuse we already have, I can use the cosine to be able to figure out this side. So we're gonna say that the cosine of, that represents the angle, which is 30 degrees, is equals to the adjacent side, which is y, over the hypotenuse. Remember, sine and cosine is always over the hypotenuse, the longest side. If we're dividing, the opposite is to multiply. These cancel, and so y is equal to, again, in here we can't really figure out unless we have a calculator or the chart that we use, they used before a long time ago. And so with the calculator, unless you have the other one, you will use it this way, okay? 400 times cosine 30, close parentheses, equal. But mine is 30 cosine, and then in here times, and then 400, and finally equal. So I am 346.4, if we round it, feet away from the pole. Okay, and so you're gonna write a sentence. The pole is 200 feet. I am 346.4 feet away from the pole. Don't forget your capital letter and ending period. Okay, let's look at another one. If you want, you can go back and take notes. I think for this one, I'm gonna write the sine and cosine in here. So sine of theta is equals to opposite over adjacent. Oh, I'm with the tangent still. Over hypotenuse. Hypotenuse. I'm just gonna leave it like that. And then for the cosine of theta is equals to adjacent over hypotenuse. Okay. So now it says you're looking standing 500 feet from the base of a cliff. You're looking up 40 degrees to your friend at the top of the cliff. How far are you from your friend? So there's a cliff, okay? And you're standing looking up. So you're down here. Now some word problems said that you also are 5 feet tall or something like that, and you would have to add that at the end if it does include that, but in this case it doesn't say that. Okay, so this is you, and then your friend is at the top of the cliff. You're looking standing 500 feet from the base of the cliff. So this is the base, this is you. You're standing 500 feet from the base. So this will be 500 feet. And you're looking up 40 degrees. How far are you from him or her? So we're just gonna go like this. And that's what we're looking for. Okay, and you're looking at 40 degrees. Again, it will be from here, but we're just gonna put 40 degrees here. And what are we looking for? We're looking for that measurement, the length between you and your friend. And so, okay, I'm gonna look at, this is my angle. This is the right angle, okay? What side is between the two angles? Oh, it's the adjacent. It's almost like adjacent, attached, next to the angle. Okay, so we're gonna use, which one has adjacent? Oh, the cosine. So it's gonna be cos of 40 equals adjacent, meaning the 500, over the hypotenuse, which is x. Well, guess what? In the previous example, I'm going to show you really fast. We had the 400 that we had to cancel under the x, okay? But in here, we cannot cancel the 500. Instead, we're gonna have to cancel the x, and that's not gonna isolate our x. So if we're divided by x, we multiply by x. This cancels, and I end up with 500 equals x times cosine of 40. At this point, don't mind that point. It's nothing, okay? Finally, after that, since x is not isolated, it's being multiplied by this cosine of 40, we are gonna have to now divide by cosine of 40. If we do it on one side, we do it on the other side. This cancels because when you're dividing anything by itself, it's just 1. And now you have x isolated equals, we're going to divide, and I'm gonna write in here both ways of writing it, specifically this one, so that you know that it's okay. So it's gonna be 500. That's my way, okay, my calculator. Yours, I'm gonna write it in it might be like mine or in a different way. So it's 500 divided by mine. You would have to do the angle first, 40. So this is the angle. And then press cosine, and finally equal. Okay, so I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna then after I do it, I'm gonna write for those that work differently. Again, I want to make sure that I have degree. I press 500 divided by the angle measurement, and then in here it can be sine, cosine, or tangent depending on what you have. In here we're using cosine, so cosine. And then make sure you write equal. So the distance between you and your friend is 652.7 feet. Okay. For those calculators that are the other way, you just do 500 and I'm not going to fit in one line, so I'm going to have to go down here. Divided by, you do cosine, then you do 40, then after that you close parentheses, and finally equal. Okay, so the measurement of the adjacent side divided by cosine of the angle, and remember that that angle can be different. So this is only for division. That's when you end up with the hypotenuse being the x, okay, if you don't have the measurement of the hypotenuse. Okay, so